Welcome to RPG Community College. Today I got some recommendations for starter builds for you for the upcoming Path of Exile League. And the first one I'm going to recommend is one that I actually have on this channel. It's a Poison Blade Vortex Pathfinder. Actually, all the builds I played last league are going to be pretty good for this league, but the Pathfinder is going to be the one that I think is the best. Plague Bearer just has enough damage on the gem itself to be able to clear red maps, and a Poison BV Pathfinder is going to be one of the best builds to actually stack up those Plague Bearer stacks. And you can throw a Herald of Agony in there for a little extra damage, and you got yourself a pretty decent single target build as well. You should be able to clear white and yellow maps on a 4-link, buy yourself a Tabula, and you're doing red maps no problem. It's a great starter build, and it's definitely capable of clearing all the content. You'll find a link to that down in the description. And for a build that isn't on my channel, that I think is also going to be really good, it's a Cold Dot Trickster, or an Occultist. I think cwdt and Woggle both have versions of Cold Dot builds on their YouTube channels. They're a couple leagues old, but the build hasn't really changed much, and it's still super solid. It's a great league starter and a great boss killer. It's going to be perfect for this league. But let's get into what I'm going to be playing, and which is going to be Elemental Hit Mines. This did get nerfed in the patch. It got hit by about 17-18%. And Point Blank's receiving a nerf too, so that hit it as well. But these nerfs just took the build from being kind of ridiculous to just being a good solid build. As you can see here on the Path of Building, the Point Blank node has been updated to only apply 30% more damage, but the elemental hits base damage has not been updated in Path of Building yet. To simulate the damage nerf, I just took the elemental hit gem out of the bow. That gives it +2 levels. An elemental hit receives about a 10% of its base damage for every level past 20. So giving it -2 levels is going to be a pretty accurate representation of the damage nerf that's going to be coming. And for our calculations here, we have 5 mines detonated recently and 5 mines active to take advantage of the passives that we have in the tree. We are generating power charges, again from a passive that we take on the tree, and we're applying Elemental Equilibrium because Elemental Hit just naturally does this, and this does work with mines. That's pretty much it for our increases to damage in Path of Building. And this actually gives us a nice round number of 100,000 damage per hit on a 6-link, which makes it just super easy to do some mental math. You see our mine throwing speed is 0.17, so we're throwing about 6 mines a second, so we're dealing about 600,000 Shaper DPS. But not everything is being accounted for in the DPS here. We also have the Swift Assembly support, and we're much more likely to throw an extra mine in 6 throws than we are not to. So I think it's fair to add another mine into our damage calculations. So we could say, so that'd be about 700,000 damage Shaper DPS. And we can also calculate the shock from our skitter bots on top of this. And that's going to add in about another 100,000 damage on top of that. So off of the gear I have here in the Path of Building, we're going to be hitting about 800,000 Shaper DPS on a 6-link. In which, honestly, the gear I have here is pretty mediocre, and we're being pretty conservative in our damage estimates. This is definitely going to be the lower end of your damage, is 800,000. And anytime you get a little lucky and you throw more than 1 mine from Swift Assembly, like you throw 2 or even 3 mines, you're going to be pushing over 1 million. So the damage in this build is definitely still here, and the nerfs to Elemental Hit did not kill this build. And there's still plenty of upgrades that we can get in our gear, like we can anoint Crit Multi onto our amulet, we can get a level 21 Elemental Hit, that's going to be huge. You can get a +3 bow, you can get Crit Multi on your bow, increase crit chance on your bow, elemental damage to attacks on your bow, you can get better elemental damage rolls on your gear, and all these little things can definitely add up and push the damage to well over 1 million Shaper DPS. So there's definitely some potential with more gear investment to make the damage a little more absurd. And I did put an Imperial Bow into the POB, but this is not to recommend using it. It's to show you the DPS difference between a Harbinger Bow and an Imperial Bow. You're definitely going to want the Harbinger Bow. I only do this because Imperial Bows, a 6-link Imperial Bow is going to be much more accessible than a 6-link Harbinger Bow, but it's worth the extra investment. And now the next thing you're probably asking yourself is why Ascendant? Well, I chose Ascendant because it's much more defensive. We can take the Necromancer Ascendancy. Wow, that's a weird thing to say. And that's going to allow us to use Bone Offering, which is going to turn this build into a block build. And this synergizes really well with the evasion that we're going to get from the Saboteur Ascendancy, because Blind gives you a 50% chance to evade hits from blinded enemies. If you don't know how the evasion and block interaction works, I'll explain it real quick. Evasion works on an entropy system, which means that over time, the amount of hits that you will evade will be the amount of evasion that you have. So we're blinding enemies and we have a 50% chance to evade. If we evade an attack, the next attack has a 100% chance to hit us. If we get hit and we have 50% evasion, we have a 100% chance to evade the next attack. So that over time, our chance to evade will be 50%. That's basically what entropy means. And blocks are hits that deal 0 damage. So if we have a 50% chance to evade, and then we block an attack, we will have a 100% chance to evade the next attack. Because blocks count as hits, they just deal 0 damage. And with Bone Offering, when we block an attack, we're going to get healed. So 50% of the attacks that come at you are going to be healing you instead of hurting you. And the Ascendant's Saboteur Ascendancy is also giving us life regen every time we detonate a mine. So combine this with the life gain on block from Bone Offering and a health flask, and you've got some pretty good health sustain. And for our energy shield, we just go Wicked Ward. So we just gotta stop taking damage for a couple seconds, then it'll recharge, and damage will interrupt the recharge, and it'll be a pretty effective use of the little energy shield buffer we got going on in our health. And going hybrid, we're able to make a pretty large, chunky health pool with not on a pretty low gear investment. Getting more than 6k health on a hybrid build is actually pretty easy. As you can see here, with the gear I have about 6.5k health. And with better rolled gear, which is you can get, it's very possible that you're going to be pushing over 7k effective health with this build. The one thing you're going to have to look out for is probably chaos damage though, because that's going to go straight through your energy shield. You're only going to have 5k effective life against that. And especially since a lot of chaos damage is damage over time, you can't block that, you can't evade that. You're going to have to watch out for that stuff. Oh, and something else I should definitely say about Bone Offering is in the cast when damage taken setup, you're going to want to order the gems so that Desecrate is casted first, and the gems are cast in a clockwise order, so just make sure that Desecrate is placed before Bone Offering, or when your cast when damage taken goes off, you're not going to be getting the Bone Offering buff. And I also have a self-cast Desecrate in the build and Bone Offering, and this is mostly just for bossing. While you're mapping, hopefully it'll be able to sustain itself, but if not, you'll have to manually cast it. For the build's gear, we're mostly just going to be using a lot of rare items. For the armor, we just want energy shield bases with an okay-ish amount of energy shield and life on them. Our bow is just a +2 to socketed bow gems bow with mind damage crafted onto it. This should be pretty easy to get. The expensive part about this bow is going to be making the 6-link, or getting a 6-link. We use a rearguard arrow quiver. This is pretty much just a meme quiver, and I don't think I've ever even seen it used in any other build but this one. This is going to be a very cheap item. And for my boots, I'm using a pair of Brine Rot Whalers. This is just a nice pair of unique boots. You can actually get these from farming the Brine Rot map. I think it's the shipyard. That boss actually has a chance to drop these, and they're actually not too uncommon. So if you got some shipyard maps, run them. We also have a Rumi's Concoction down here because we are a block build. So having a flask that gives us a lot of block is going to be really nice. Kind of self-explanatory, really, if you think about it. And on our jewelry and our belt and things like this, we really want to get weapon elemental damage with attacks, and we want to use opal rings. getting all of these elemental damage rolls on your gear really does add up, and it plays an important part in getting your damage up to acceptable levels. So really try to get these rolls in your gear. And for the jewel socket, I mean, you can use anything. I mean, you'd probably want to get something better than a poacher's aim jewel. I just threw this in there because, you know, everyone's going to have it. So, I mean, it's not a bad jewel to use early, but you're going to want to get something with crit multi on it, definitely. And now I'm going to spend the rest of this video talking about leveling. If you've never leveled as a Sion before, especially as a league starter, you'll probably want to listen to it, and a league starter can be pretty painful if you don't have a solid plan and a good build behind it. The Sion starting nodes are just worse than every other character starting nodes, and you're going to be taking a lot of tribal nodes, especially in this build around like Act 5. Like all the skill points you get are going to be spent on traveling. Well, first things first, in the description I'll have a link to the Path of Building, of course, but I'll also have notes on my gem progression for the first 4 acts, so you can just like copy paste this into a notepad, and you can have this on like a second monitor, or like your phone or something while you're leveling to reference. But basically my plan is to start off as Spark, and then go into Arc Mines, because that's going to feel a lot better early on than Elemental Hit Mines. Elemental Hit kind of doesn't start feeling good until you get a 4-link, which I'm going to transition into in Act 3 after I get the 4-link. And the build kind of doesn't change much from there, and it's pretty smooth sailing. You can just you can pick up a cast 1 damage taken steelskin in Act 4, and that's gonna be really helpful because we don't get a lot of life in this leveling build. Oh, and in the notes next to like the act where it says what act it is, it'll tell you the colors of the sockets that you need in your main damage setup. So in Act 1 it's gonna be a blue, blue, green. Same thing for Act 2. Act 3 you're gonna need blue, green, green, red, and same thing for Act 4. And on the screen here, you should be seeing what your skill tree is going to be looking like around level 45. We obviously, in the endgame tree, we go through the shadow start, but we can't do that starting off as a Sion, so we go through the spell damage nodes, and we go up. You don't take elemental equilibrium until you transition into LE hit. Like what you want to do is get a level, and then transition into LE hit, and be ready to take elemental equilibrium as soon as you transition. And then this is going to give you a big boost in damage. And if you take elemental equilibrium before you transition out of Arc Mines, you're going to be dealing a lot less damage, because you're going to be increasing the monster's elemental resistances to lightning, and it's going to feel really bad. We basically just grab some mine clusters, and we work our way around to the nodes that give us piercing, so that we don't have to use a pierce gem. That is a huge quality of life. Then we grab some dodge to make us a little tankier, because we don't got no health. And then we work our way down to point blank. It's important that you get point blank before you kill Kitava, or before the Kitava fight. It's going to make it feel a lot better to do. In my run that I did, I didn't grab point blank before I fought Kitava, and it really didn't feel that great. Like, I've had worse Kitava fights, but I've also had better. Just take point blank and make the Kitava fight even easier for yourself. And then after I kill Kitava, that's when I start filling out my health nodes. We start branching into the shadow starting area. I start working my way towards the Sion life wheel around the blood aqueduct. And there's really just a lot of really strong nodes that you want to get. This build just actually scales really, really well with the more levels you get. And I was able to get to the blood aqueducts in a little under 6 hours. And to kind of put this into perspective, this is pretty average for me. Like, the LE hit mines didn't really speed up my progression at all, but also didn't slow it down. So if this seems slow to you, you can probably do this faster. And if you think this is fast, don't worry, you'll get there. And really, after you've ran through the campaign like 6-7 times, and you really put some effort into finishing the campaign quickly, it goes by really quick. And getting to blood aqueducts in 6 hours isn't really a prestigious achievement, but it's decent. And that's going to be all for this video. If you'd like to continue your education, enrollment here is free. All you have to do is like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I hope you learned a thing or two. I wish you the best of luck in all of your endeavors, and I hope to see you again soon.